Aliens declared war after 8,000 years. They never knew about Earth's secret fleet, until it was too late. Far beyond the edge of the solar system, in the cold black of deep space, a massive alien ship drifted in silence. It had been there for a long time, longer than any human could imagine. The ship was called the Draukar's Eye, and it belonged to the Kal Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. The Kal had been watching Earth for 8,000 years. They had watched when humans built the first pyramids in the desert. They had watched wars rise and fall, kingdoms grow and crumble, and cities spread across the land like slow fire. Every 100 years, a small scout ship would pass by, take pictures, record signals, and leave again, without being seen. The humans never knew. They looked up at the stars and thought they were alone. They were wrong. The Kal did not attack because Earth was not seen as a threat. It was seen as a curiosity, a strange, violent, but weak little planet full of short-lived creatures who fought each other more than they explored the stars. For thousands of years, the Kal High Council debated what to do with Earth. Some wanted to study it forever. Some wanted to leave it alone. And some, a growing number, wanted to take it. That last group finally won. High Marshal Draukar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Voidbreaker, staring at a glowing star map. His skin was pale gray, his eyes a deep burning orange, and his voice was low and heavy, like stone grinding against stone. He was the leader of the Kal Warfleet, and he had waited his whole life for this moment. 8,000 years, he said to his second-in-command, a sharp-eyed officer named Zeth. 8,000 years we watched them crawl. Now they build machines. Now they send signals into space. Now they dream of leaving their little world. Zeth nodded. The Council fears they will grow too strong if we wait longer, Marshal. Draukar's orange eyes narrowed. They fear nothing. I fear nothing. We simply finish what should have been finished long ago. The order was given. The Kal Dominion would declare war on Earth. On Earth, life continued as normal. In New York, people walked to work under a gray morning sky. In Lagos, markets buzzed with noise and color. In Tokyo, trains moved like clockwork through the city. No one on the surface knew that far above them, alien ships were gathering. But not everyone was unaware. Deep beneath the United Nations building in New York, in a room hidden behind 3 layers of security, a small group of people watched a screen. The room was called the Overwatch Chamber, and only a few hundred people on all of Earth knew it existed. General Marcus Cole stood at the center of the room, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the data streaming across the main screen. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and a face worn by decades of secrets. He had spent his whole career preparing for a day he hoped would never come. "Confirm it," he said quietly. A young officer at a console turned pale. "Sir, it's confirmed. Long-range sensors picked up a massive fleet forming near the edge of the system. At least 200 ships. Maybe more. They are not hiding anymore." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. He had known this day was coming. His father had known it too, and his father before him. For generations, a secret had been passed down inside a small circle of scientists, soldiers, and leaders. The secret was this: humanity was not alone, and one day, the ones watching from the stars would come. "Wake the Council," Marcus said. "Tell them it's time." 2 hours later, in an underground command center, hidden inside a mountain in Colorado, 12 people sat around a long table. They were the Earth Defense Council, a secret group formed decades ago, made up of leaders from every major nation on the planet. Their job was simple but heavy: prepare Earth for first contact, and if needed, prepare Earth for war. At the head of the table sat Admiral Elena Voss, a tall woman with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair. She was the commander of Earth's greatest secret, a fleet of warships built far from prying eyes, hidden for over 60 years, waiting for a war that everyone hoped would never come. "They are here," Elena said, looking around the table. "The scans don't lie. A war fleet is gathering at the edge of our solar system. Based on the size and formation, my analysts believe first contact will happen within 72 hours. A man across the table, the Secretary General of the United Nations, rubbed his face with both hands. 72 hours. After 8,000 years of hiding from us, they give us 3 days. They didn't hide from us, Marcus said, entering the room and taking a seat. We hid from them, or rather, we didn't know to look. Elena nodded. Doesn't matter now. What matters is what we do next. She pressed a button on the table, and a hologram rose above it, showing a massive shape hidden deep beneath the southern ice of Antarctica. It looked like a hidden city, buried under miles of ice and rock, filled with hangars, shipyards, and something enormous still under construction. Project Aegis, Elena said. 60 years of work, hidden from every satellite, every spy, every curious eye on this planet, and, we hoped, off this planet too. 200 warships, advanced weapons, built from technology we reverse-engineered, from a piece of alien wreckage that fell to Earth in 1962. The Secretary General leaned forward. You are telling me we have had a secret space fleet, hidden under Antarctica, for 60 years, and only a handful of people knew. Yes, Elena said simply. Because if the wrong people knew, or if the wrong species learned of it too soon, this war would already be lost. Surprise is the only advantage we have. While the Council debated, far above Earth, the first alien scout ships broke away from the main fleet and moved closer to the planet. They wanted the humans to see them coming. They wanted fear to spread first, before the real attack began. Fear, the Kaal believed, was the best weapon of all. On Earth, within hours, telescopes around the world picked up strange objects in the sky. News channels lit up with confusion and panic. Governments that were not part of the secret council scrambled to understand what was happening. Some people thought it was a hoax. Some thought it was the military testing new aircraft. But as the ships grew closer and more visible, panic began to spread across cities. In Colorado, General Marcus Cole watched footage of crowded streets, people staring up at the sky, some running, some simply standing frozen in shock. We cannot keep this hidden anymore, he said. The world needs to know the truth, all of it. Admiral Voss nodded slowly. Then it's time to tell them about the fleet, too. That night, for the first time in human history, every screen on Earth showed the same message at the same time. Presidents, prime ministers, and leaders from every nation stood together, broadcasting from a single unified message center. It was the first time humanity had ever truly spoken as one voice. The Secretary General stood before the cameras, his face calm but tired. People of Earth, he began, 8,000 years ago, our planet came to the attention of a power far beyond our world. They have watched us grow, change, and struggle, from a distance, in silence. Today, that silence has ended. A fleet from a civilization called the Kaal Dominion has entered our solar system. They have declared their intention to take our world. Gasps and cries rang out in homes and streets across the planet. Some people screamed, some fell silent, unable to process the words. The Secretary General continued, "But I must also tell you something else, something kept secret for 60 years, by necessity, not by choice. Humanity has not been unprepared. For 6 decades, a group of scientists, engineers, soldiers, and leaders have worked in secret to build a defense, a fleet of our own, hidden, waiting, ready. Across the world, people stared at their screens in stunned silence. We call it Project Aegis, he said. And tonight, for the first time, it will rise. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, massive doors that had not opened in decades began to shake loose ice and stone. Inside the hidden shipyard, engineers rushed to their stations. Lights flared on across a chamber the size of a small city. Row after row of sleek black warships sat in their docking cradles, engines beginning to hum to life for the first time in years. Admiral Elena Voss walked down the central platform of the command ship, the Horizon, her flagship, and the largest vessel in the secret fleet. She had trained for this moment since she was a young officer. Her grandmother had helped design the very first prototype ships decades ago. Now, it was her turn to lead them into battle. She stepped onto the bridge, and the crew turned to face her. "Systems fully online, Admiral," said her first officer, a young man named Captain Diego Reyes. "Fleet status, 212 ships, ready for launch." Elena looked at the massive doors above them, slowly grinding open to reveal a dark sky filled with stars, and somewhere beyond it, an enemy fleet that had no idea what was waiting for them. They watched us for 8,000 years, Elena said quietly, and they still don't know who we really are. She turned to her crew, her voice steady and strong. Let's show them. The engines of the horizon roared to life, and one by one, the ships of the secret fleet began to rise from their hidden home beneath the ice, lifting into the sky toward the stars, toward the coming war, and toward a battle that would decide the fate of Earth. Far above, the Kaal fleet continued its approach, confident and unafraid, still believing that Earth was nothing more than a helpless little world. They had no idea what was coming for them. To understand why the Kaal Dominion waited 8,000 years before attacking, one must understand how the Kaal saw the universe. To them, time meant little. A single Kaal could live for over 300 years. Their empire had existed for tens of thousands of years, spreading across hundreds of star systems, conquering weaker species, and folding them into the Dominion. To a species that measured its history in tens of thousands of years, 8,000 years, watching one small planet, was barely a pause. The first Kaal scout had found Earth by accident, chasing a damaged trade ship that had wandered off course. What they found was a blue and green world, full of primitive, but strangely resilient creatures. The scout reported back that these creatures built structures from stone, fought each other constantly, yet also created art, music, and stories. The report reached the Kaal High Council, and a decision was made. Watch, but do not interfere. Not yet. For centuries, that policy held. Scout ships came and went. Some humans across history claimed to see strange lights in the sky, or strange visitors in their dreams and legends. Most of these stories were dismissed as myth, but a very few, were true. The real change began in 1962, when a small Kaal reconnaissance vessel suffered a systems failure during a routine pass near Earth. It crashed into a remote desert region, and though most of its systems were destroyed, a small group of very careful, very secretive scientists managed to recover key pieces of alien technology before the wreck could be traced by anyone else. That crash was the true beginning of Project Aegis. It gave humanity, for the first time, real proof that they were not alone, and a small but priceless gift, fragments of technology far beyond anything built on Earth. From that day forward, a tiny circle of trusted scientists and military leaders began the slow, secret work of understanding it, and eventually, of building with it. Back on Earth, in the days that followed first contact, the entire planet changed. Schools closed, markets slowed. People gathered in city squares and living rooms, staring up at screens and skies, trying to make sense of a truth too large to hold in their minds. In Mumbai, a mother held her two children close as they watched the news together, unsure if tomorrow would come the same way today had. In Nairobi, a group of young engineering students who had once dreamed of working for a space agency now wondered if their skills would be needed for something far greater and far more dangerous than they had imagined. In Berlin, an old man who remembered stories his grandfather told about lights in the war-torn sky during the last World War now wondered if those lights had truly been human after all. Fear was everywhere, but so was something else, a strange, quiet unity. For the first time in history, humanity was not divided by borders or old arguments. There was only one question on everyone's mind: could Earth survive what was coming? In the Colorado Command Center, Admiral Voss and General Cole worked through the night with the Earth Defense Council, coordinating the final steps needed before Project Aegis could fully launch. Communication lines opened to leaders across the globe. Military bases on every continent moved to full alert. Civilian evacuation plans, quietly prepared decades ago and never used, were finally put into motion for cities closest to expected landing zones. The Kaal fleet has slowed its approach, reported a young analyst, her voice tight with tension. Long-range scans suggest they are studying us, gathering more data before they commit to a full assault. They think they have time, Marcus said. They think we're still the same frightened, disorganized species from 100 years ago. Elena allowed herself a small, tired smile. Let them think that a little longer. She turned to the main screen, watching real-time footage from orbital cameras as the hidden fleet beneath Antarctica continued to rise, ship after ship breaking free from the ice and vanishing into the darkness of space, forming into careful battle formations, far from Earth's watching eyes. How long until full fleet deployment? Marcus asked. 6 hours, Elena answered. Then Project Aegis will be fully operational for the first time in its history. Marcus studied the growing formation on the screen, 200 sleek black ships gathering like a silent storm above the planet they were built to protect. 8,000 years, he murmured. They spent 8,000 years deciding we were too weak to matter. Let's make sure that's the last mistake they ever make. Outside, the sun rose over a changed world, one that now knew, for certain, it was not alone in the universe, and one that, for the first time in its long history, was ready to fight for its place among the stars. The war for Earth had begun. Aliens declared war. After 8,000 years, they never knew about Earth's secret fleet, until it was too late. The Kal Warfleet moved closer to Earth, slow and steady, like a predator that had already decided its prey could not escape. High Marshal Draukar stood on the bridge of the Voidbreaker, watching the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. He felt no fear, no doubt, only the calm patience of a hunter who had waited a very long time for this moment. Report, he said. Zeth, his second-in-command, checked the data flowing across his console. No significant defense detected, Marshal. Ground-based weapons only. Nothing that could threaten a fleet of our size. Their most advanced spacecraft are small vessels, used for exploration. Nothing built for war. Draukar allowed himself something close to a smile. As expected, 8,000 years of watching, and they still play with toys. Should we begin the assault? Zeth asked. Not yet, Draukar said. First, we send a message. Let them understand what is coming, and let them feel the fear of it before the first shot is fired. Fear breaks a species faster than weapons do. On Earth, every screen, every radio, every communication device suddenly filled with a strange signal. It was not words at first, just a deep, rumbling tone that made people's skin crawl. Then, slowly, a translated message began to play in every language spoken on the planet. People of Earth, you are addressed by High Marshal Draukar of the Kal Dominion. For 8,000 years, our people watched yours grow. We have decided that your world will now belong to the Dominion. Resistance is meaningless. Surrender your planet, and many of you may be permitted to live as subjects of the Dominion. Resist, and you will be destroyed. Silence fell over cities across the globe. In town squares, people stood frozen, staring up at the sky. In command centers, military officers gripped their consoles tightly, waiting for orders. In the Colorado Command Center, General Marcus Cole listened to the message with a hard, unreadable expression. Admiral Elena Voss stood beside him, arms crossed, jaw tight. They want us to surrender, Marcus said. They think we'll just hand over our planet because they're bigger and stronger. They don't know what we've built, Elena said. They don't know about Aegis. Not yet, Marcus said. Let's give them a reason to find out. The Secretary General once again addressed the world, his voice steady, despite the fear gripping the planet. People of Earth, we have received the enemy's demand, he said. Our answer is no. Humanity will not surrender its home. We have prepared for this day for 60 years, and though the road ahead will be hard, we do not stand defenseless. We stand together, as one world, and we will fight for our future. The message spread across the planet like wildfire. Fear did not disappear, but something else grew alongside it. Determination. In cities everywhere, people who had spent their lives arguing over politics, religion, and borders suddenly found themselves standing side by side, watching the same sky, hoping for the same outcome. High Marshal Draukar received the human response with mild surprise, then cold anger. They refuse? He said, his voice low and dangerous. They refuse, Marshal, Zeth confirmed. Draukar's orange eyes burned brighter. Then we begin. Send the first wave. Destroy their military bases. Show them what defiance costs. 20 Kal warships broke away from the main fleet and began their descent toward Earth's atmosphere. aiming for known military installations across the globe. Alarms rang out in bases from North America to Asia. Anti-aircraft systems, radar stations, and ground troops prepared for an attack unlike anything they had ever trained for. The first Kal ships entered the atmosphere in streaks of fire, their hulls glowing from the heat of entry, weapons already charging. On the ground, soldiers stared up at the sky in stunned silence, watching death fall toward them from the heavens. But High Marshal Draukar had made a mistake, the same mistake made by every enemy who had ever underestimated a desperate and determined species. He believed Earth's only defense was what could be seen from orbit. He was wrong. As the 20 Kal warships broke through Earth's atmosphere, alarms rang out on the bridge of the Voidbreaker. "Marshal," Zeth's voice was sharp with alarm. "New contacts." Massive contacts, rising from the planet's southern pole. Draukar turned sharply toward the screen. Where before there had been nothing but ice and empty ocean, now there were ships, hundreds of them, sleek, black, and moving with a speed and precision that did not belong to a primitive species. "Impossible," Draukar hissed. "Analysis, now." "Unknown design," an officer called out, voice trembling. "Advanced weapon signatures. Advanced propulsion. Marshal, this technology, it is not consistent with anything we observed from this planet before." Draukar's hands tightened into fists. They were hiding a fleet. All this time they were hiding a fleet from us. Above Earth, the newly launched ships of Project Aegis moved into formation, forming a wide, curved wall between the planet and the descending Kal warships. At the head of the formation, the flagship Horizon led the charge, Admiral Elena Voss standing at its bridge with calm, focused eyes. "Enemy ships entering engagement range," Captain Reyes reported. "They've noticed us, Admiral. Their formation is breaking, some ships turning to face us." "Good," Elena said. "Let them turn. All ships, prepare for engagement. Target the 20 ships closest to atmospheric entry first. We do not let a single one reach the surface." "Yes, Admiral." The fleet of 200 human warships surged forward, engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. The 20 Kal ships, caught off guard, scrambled to adjust their formation, weapons systems flashing to life as they tried to understand the sudden and impossible threat now bearing down on them. The first shots of the war for Earth lit up the sky like a new sunrise. The battle was fast and brutal. The Kal ships, though advanced, were built for conquering planets that could not fight back, not for facing a fleet built and trained in complete secrecy for exactly this moment. Human weapons, forged from decades of study on recovered alien technology, tore through Kal shields with devastating accuracy. One by one, Kal warships exploded in silent bursts of light, debris scattering across the void. The human fleet moved with practiced coordination, ships supporting each other, covering blind spots, striking with precision honed through countless simulations run over 60 long years. Aboard the Voidbreaker, Draukar watched in stunned disbelief as reports flooded in. "Marshal, we've lost 12 ships," Zeth reported, his voice shaking. "The remaining 8 are retreating toward the main fleet." "Retreating?" Draukar's voice was a low growl. "Kale's ships do not retreat." "They will be destroyed if they do not, Marshal." Draukar stared at the screen, watching the human fleet regroup near their planet, their formation tight and disciplined, nothing like the disorganized chaos he had expected from a species he believed to be little more than clever animals. "Order full retreat of the advance wave," he said finally, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Bring them back to the main fleet. We need to reassess." Back on the horizon, cheers rang out across the bridge as the last of the retreating Kal ships vanished from sensor range. Admiral Voss allowed herself a brief moment of relief before turning back to the tactical display, where the much larger Kal main fleet still loomed at the edge of the solar system. That was only their advance wave, she reminded her crew, her voice cutting through the celebration. 20 ships, sent to test us, to scare us into surrender. We destroyed 12, and we should remember something important. The fleet they still have waiting out there is more than 10 times larger than what we just fought. The bridge fell quiet. "We won this battle," Elena continued, "but the war has just begun. They know about us now. They know Earth can fight back, and that means they will not underestimate us again. Captain Reyes turned to her. What's our next move, Admiral? Elena studied the tactical display for a long moment, watching the distant cluster of Kaal ships regrouping at the edge of the system. We hold our position, reinforce our defenses, and prepare for what's coming, she said. Because High Marshal Draukar is not going to make the same mistake twice. His next attack will not be a test. It will be everything he has. Far away, aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar stood in silence, staring out at the stars, anger and disbelief warring within him. 8,000 years of watching, 8,000 years of careful observation, and still, Earth had found a way to surprise the Kaal Dominion. Send word to the Council, he said finally. Tell them the primitive world is not as primitive as we believed. Tell them we require the full might of the Dominion fleet. Zeth hesitated. Marshal, requesting the full fleet means declaring this a priority war. It means committing everything. Draukar turned, his orange eyes blazing with cold fury. They hid a fleet from us for 60 years, right beneath our watching eyes. They have made this a priority war whether we wished it or not. He turned back to the stars, to the small blue planet that had somehow, impossibly, found the strength to fight back. Bring everything, he said quietly. This time, we finish it. Behind him, across the vast darkness of space, signals began traveling outward, calling the full might of the Kaal Dominion toward a single small planet that had just proven it was far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had ever imagined. The real war for Earth was about to begin. Down on Earth, the news of the first battle spread quickly. Footage captured by ground telescopes and orbital cameras showed brief flashes of light in the night sky, 12 enemy ships destroyed, and a defending fleet no one had known existed just days earlier. For the first time since the invasion began, the fear gripping the planet was joined by something new: hope. In a small apartment in Manila, a young woman named Mia Santos sat with her family, watching the footage over and over on her phone. She had grown up dreaming of becoming a pilot, and though she had never imagined her dream might one day mean flying into battle against creatures from another star system, watching the human fleet defend the planet lit something inside her. The next morning, recruitment centers across the world, quietly prepared years in advance for exactly this kind of moment, opened their doors publicly for the first time. Long lines formed outside buildings that, until a few days ago, ordinary citizens had not even known existed. Engineers, pilots, doctors, soldiers, and volunteers of every kind stepped forward, ready to help however they could. Mia was one of the first in line at her city's center. When asked why she wanted to join, she said simply, "Because for the first time in my life, I know exactly what I'm here to protect." In the Colorado Command Center, General Cole reviewed reports from around the world with a growing sense of both pride and urgency. Volunteers were pouring in by the millions. Factories that once built cars and electronics were being converted, almost overnight, to produce parts for ships, weapons, and defense systems, following blueprints kept ready in secret for decades. The response has been incredible, said one of his aides, a woman named Dr. Amara Singh, the lead scientist behind much of Project Aegis's weapon systems. But sir, we need to be honest with ourselves. Recruits need months of training before they're ready for real combat. We don't have months. Marcus nodded grimly. Then we make the best use of the time we do have. Every scientist, every engineer, every soldier we have needs to be working toward one goal: buying Admiral Voss's fleet enough time and enough support to survive what's coming. Amara pulled up a display showing the reverse-engineered alien technology that had formed the foundation of everything they built. There's something else, sir. Something we haven't had time to fully explore. The wreckage from 1962 contained fragments of a technology we've only partially understood. Something related to long-range shield generation. If we can complete the research in time, it could change everything. How much time do you need? Amara hesitated. Weeks, at least. Maybe longer. Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the massive Kaal fleet still gathering at the edge of the solar system. We might not have weeks, but get your team working on it anyway. Every advantage matters now. Aboard the Horizon, Admiral Voss walked through the ship's corridors, speaking with crew members, checking on repairs, and reviewing reports from the brief but fierce battle. Many of her officers were young, some barely out of training, thrust suddenly into the reality of interstellar war. She made a point of speaking with as many of them as she could, offering calm words and steady confidence, even as her own mind worked through the grim mathematics of what was still to come. She found Captain Reyes in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Something on your mind, Captain?" she asked. Reyes turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Just thinking about the numbers, Admiral. 200 ships against a fleet that could be over 2,000. Even with better weapons, better shields, I don't see how we win a fight like that in open combat." Elena stood beside him, looking out at the same stars. "You're right. If this comes down to a straight, even battle out in open space, we lose. That's not a fight we can win through numbers or firepower alone." "Then how do we win it?" Elena's eyes hardened with quiet determination. "By making sure it's never a straight fight. 60 years of secrecy gave us more than just ships, Captain. It gave us knowledge of exactly how the Kal think, how they fight, and how they plan. Every scrap of data we gathered from that crash in 1962, every signal we intercepted over the decades, every piece of the puzzle went into preparing not just our weapons, but our strategy." She turned to him, her voice steady. "Draukar believes he is dealing with a primitive species that got lucky once. He will come back with overwhelming force, expecting to crush what remains of our resistance in a single decisive strike. That confidence, that certainty that he already understands us completely, is the greatest weakness he has, and we intend to use it." Reyes studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "So the battle we just won wasn't the real fight?" "No," Elena said quietly, turning back to the stars. "It was the opening move. The real fight is still ahead of us, and when it comes, Draukar is going to learn that 8,000 years of watching taught him far less about humanity than he believes." Behind them, across the solar system, the distant lights of the gathering Kal fleet continued to grow, ship after ship arriving to join the coming assault, unaware that the very confidence fueling their approach was about to become their greatest weakness. Aliens declared war after 8,000 years. They never knew about Earth's secret fleet, until it was too late. 3 weeks passed since the first battle above Earth. In that time, the planet changed in ways no one could have imagined. Factories across every continent worked day and night, building ships, weapons, and armor. Millions of volunteers trained in crash courses, designed to turn ordinary people into soldiers, engineers, and pilots in record time. And far beyond the edge of the solar system, the Kal Dominion gathered its full might, preparing for an assault meant to end the war in a single, crushing blow. In the Colorado Command Center, General Marcus Cole studied the latest reports with a tired but focused expression. Dr. Amara Singh stood beside him, holding a datapad with a small, hopeful smile. "Tell me you have good news," Marcus said. "Better than good," Amara replied. "We finished it. The shield technology from the 1962 wreckage. It works, sir. We successfully tested it on 3 prototype ships this morning. Shield strength nearly triple what we had before." Marcus allowed himself a rare smile. "How long to install it across the fleet?" "With every factory working around the clock, we can outfit half the fleet within 10 days. The rest will take longer." "We might not have 10 days, Marcus said, glancing at the tactical display showing the massive Kal fleet, now numbering over 2,000 ships, still gathering at the edge of the solar system. "But get it done as fast as you can. Every ship we upgrade could mean the difference between victory and disaster." Aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar reviewed the final preparations for the coming assault. His fleet had grown enormous, ships arriving from every corner of Kal territory, answering the call to crush the small blue planet that had dared to defy them. "Full fleet strength now stands at 2,300 vessels," Zeth reported. "Every class of warship in the Dominion arsenal is represented, Marshal. Nothing has been held back." Draukar studied the tactical display showing Earth and its defending fleet, now grown to nearly 400 ships through new construction. Still far smaller than his own force, but larger than before. "They continue to build," Draukar said, his voice thoughtful rather than angry now. Weeks of study had cooled his fury into something more calculating. They are clever, more clever than any species we have conquered before. But cleverness cannot overcome overwhelming force. Your orders, Marshal? Draukar's eyes hardened. We do not send another small wave to test their defenses again. We commit the entire fleet in a single, unified assault. Overwhelm their formations from every direction at once. Give them no room to use their technology, their strategy, or their clever tricks. Simply crush them beneath our numbers. And the planet itself? Once their fleet is destroyed, the planet will have no choice but to surrender, Draukar said. We begin the final assault in 48 hours. Word of the coming attack reached the human fleet through long-range sensors and intercepted communications. Admiral Elena Voss called an emergency meeting aboard the Horizon, gathering her top commanders and Earth's Defense Council through secure video link. They're coming with everything, Elena said, standing before a large tactical display showing the full might of the Kal fleet. Over 2,000 ships, against our 400. If this becomes the massive direct battle Draukar wants, we will lose, no matter how good our weapons are. Then what's the plan, Admiral? Asked General Cole through the video link. Elena turned to a smaller screen showing a detailed star map of the solar system. For 60 years, Project Aegis wasn't just about building ships. It was about building a strategy, based on everything we learned about how the Kal fight. And there's one thing we learned above all else. The Kal value overwhelming force above everything. Their entire military doctrine is built around it. They plan for massive, direct confrontations, because that's how they've conquered every other species they've ever faced. So we don't give them that confrontation, said Captain Reyes, catching on. Exactly, Elena said. We're not going to meet them in open space where their numbers can surround and crush us. Instead, we're going to draw them into the asteroid belt. A murmur ran through the room. The asteroid belt, a dense field of rock and debris between Mars and Jupiter, was treacherous territory for any large fleet, filled with hazards that could damage or destroy ships caught unprepared. Our ships have been training in asteroid field combat simulations for years, long before we knew this war was coming, Elena continued. Our pilots know how to navigate dense debris fields at high speed. The Kal do not. Their massive fleet, their greatest strength in open space, becomes a liability in an environment like that. Numbers stop mattering when ships can't maneuver freely without risking collision. Dr. Singh spoke up from the Colorado Command Center. There's something else, Admiral. With the new shield technology we developed, our ships can withstand minor asteroid impacts that would otherwise cripple us. Combined with the terrain advantage, this could level the playing field significantly. Elena nodded. That's exactly the plan. We let Draukar believe he's chasing a retreating, disorganized fleet into the asteroid belt. We draw his forces in, break up their formations using the terrain, and strike where they're most vulnerable. General Cole studied the plan carefully. It's risky, Admiral. If Draukar doesn't take the bait, or if he sends only part of his fleet instead of the whole force, then we adjust, Elena said firmly. But everything we know about Kal military doctrine says he won't hold back. His pride, and his belief that overwhelming force always wins, will drive him to commit everything. We just need to make the retreat convincing enough. 2 days later, the Kal fleet began its final approach toward Earth, a wall of over 2,000 ships moving with terrifying, unstoppable momentum. Aboard the Voidbreaker, Draukar watched with grim satisfaction as sensors detected the human fleet moving to intercept. They're forming up to meet us directly, Zeth reported, sounding almost surprised. Given the numbers, that seems unwise for them. They have no other choice, Draukar said. A species backed into a corner still fights, even when the fight cannot be won. Prepare for full engagement. As the two fleets drew closer, the human ships suddenly broke formation, turning and retreating at high speed toward the distant asteroid belt. Confusion rippled through the Kal command structure. They're fleeing, Marshal, Zeth said. Their formation has completely broken apart. Draukar's orange eyes narrowed as he studied the retreating human fleet. For a brief moment, doubt flickered through his mind, a memory of the first battle, of the surprise that had cost him 12 ships, and his confidence. But that doubt was quickly buried beneath decades of military certainty and pride. They panic, Draukar said. They realize the true size of our fleet and lose their courage. Pursue them. Do not let a single ship escape. Crush them before they can regroup. The massive Kal fleet surged forward, chasing the retreating human ships toward the dense, rocky expanse of the asteroid belt, exactly as Admiral Voss had planned. Aboard the Horizon, Elena watched the pursuing Kal fleet on her tactical display, her expression calm, despite the enormous risk of the gambit playing out before her. They're taking the bait, Captain Reyes said, a note of tension in his voice. Full fleet commitment, just like you predicted, Admiral. Maintain the retreat pattern, Elena ordered. Keep them chasing until we're deep inside the asteroid field. We only get one chance to spring this trap correctly. The human fleet continued its careful, controlled retreat, leading the massive Kal armada deeper and deeper into the dense asteroid belt. Behind them, the Kal ships, built for open combat and overwhelming force, began struggling against the unfamiliar terrain, formations breaking apart as pilots fought to avoid collisions with tumbling rocks and debris. Marshal, our formation cohesion is dropping rapidly, Zeth reported aboard the Voidbreaker, worry creeping into his voice for the first time. The terrain is disrupting our coordinated movement. Several ships have already sustained minor collision damage. Draukar's confidence wavered slightly as he studied the chaotic battlefield forming around his once perfect formation. Order all ships to reduce speed and maintain tighter groupings. Marshal, if we slow down, the human fleet will gain distance. I am aware of the risk, Draukar snapped, but a fractured fleet is a vulnerable fleet. Better to advance carefully than to hand them an opportunity. But it was already too late. As the Kal fleet slowed and tightened its formation, struggling against the treacherous terrain, Admiral Voss gave the order she had been waiting for. Now, she said quietly, all ships, engage. The human fleet, which had appeared to be in full retreat, suddenly reversed course, using the asteroid field's dense cover to launch a coordinated ambush from multiple directions at once. Ships that had been trained for years in exactly this kind of combat moved with precision through the debris field, striking at the confused and disorganized edges of the massive Kal formation. Explosions lit up the darkness as the first wave of the ambush tore into unprepared Kal ships. Confusion turned to chaos aboard the Voidbreaker as reports of losses flooded in from every direction. Marshal, we're being attacked from multiple vectors, Zeth shouted over the sound of alarms. Formation 7 is being decimated. Formation 12 reports heavy losses. Draukar stared at the tactical display in disbelief, as the battle he had expected to be a simple, overwhelming victory transformed into a desperate, chaotic struggle within the treacherous asteroid field. Impossible, he whispered. This is impossible. But it was happening, and for the first time since the war began, High Marshal Draukar felt something he had not felt in centuries. Genuine fear. The trap had been sprung, and the battle for the asteroid belt had only just begun. Aboard one of the smaller human ships, the Meridian, a young pilot named Mia Santos gripped her controls tightly, guiding her fighter through the chaos of tumbling rocks and flashing weapons fire. Just weeks earlier, she had been standing in a recruitment line, uncertain of what her future held. Now she was flying through one of the most important battles in human history. Mia, enemy fighter on your tail, crackled a voice through her comm. It was her squadron leader, a gruff veteran named Commander Okafor, who had spent years training pilots for exactly this kind of combat. Mia's eyes flicked to her rear sensors. A Kal fighter, smaller and faster than the larger warships, was closing in behind her, weapons charging. She banked hard to the left, weaving between two massive tumbling asteroids, using the terrain exactly as she had trained. The Kal fighter, unable to match her precise, practiced movements through the debris field, clipped the edge of an asteroid and spun out of control, tumbling away in a shower of sparks before finally exploding against a larger rock formation. Nice flying, kid, Okafor said, a note of approval in his voice. Mia allowed herself a brief breath of relief before pulling her fighter back into formation. All around her, the battle raged on, human ships weaving through the asteroid field with practiced skill, striking at confused and disorganized Kal formations that struggled to adapt to terrain they had never trained for. Aboard the Horizon, Admiral Voss watched the battle unfold with careful, focused attention, adjusting strategy in real time as reports flowed in from across the fleet. "Admiral, Kal forces are attempting to regroup near the eastern edge of the field," Captain Reyes reported. "It looks like Draukar is trying to reform a defensive line." Elena studied the tactical display. "Then we don't give him the chance. Redirect the 3rd and 5th squadrons to intercept before they can consolidate. Keep the pressure constant. Every moment we deny them to reorganize is a moment their confusion works in our favor." "Yes, Admiral." As the battle continued, the advantages of the human fleet's preparation became clearer with every passing minute. The new shield technology, completed just days before the battle, allowed human ships to absorb minor asteroid collisions that would have crippled their older systems, while their years of specialized training let them move through the debris field with a confidence the Kal simply could not match. Still, the battle was far from easy. Despite their disadvantage in terrain, the sheer size of the Kal fleet meant that even disorganized, they possessed overwhelming firepower. Human losses mounted steadily as the battle raged on, ships and crews lost in the chaos of explosions and tumbling debris. The Stars lines felt each reported loss like a weight settling on her shoulders, but she kept her expression steady, knowing her crew needed her calm more than ever in this moment. "Admiral," Reyes said quietly, "we're taking heavy losses in the northern sector." "I know," Elena said. "But so are they, and unlike us, they didn't plan for this. Hold the line. We're not just fighting a battle here, Captain. We're breaking their confidence, one formation at a time." Aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar fought to regain control of a battle that had spiraled far beyond his expectations. Reports of losses continued to mount, formation after formation reporting chaos and destruction as the human fleet struck with precise, coordinated ambushes throughout the asteroid field. "Marshal, we've lost over 300 ships," Zeth reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "The 4th battle group has been completely destroyed. The humans are using the terrain against us at every turn." Draukar stared at the tactical display, his mind racing through centuries of military doctrine that had never prepared him for a battle like this. Every instinct told him to fall back to open space, where the Dominion's numerical superiority could once again become an advantage. But retreat meant admitting defeat, admitting that 8,000 years of watching had taught the Kal Dominion almost nothing about the true nature of the species they had chosen to underestimate. "Marshal, your orders?" Zeth pressed. For a long moment, Draukar said nothing, watching the chaos unfold across his tactical display. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy with a decision that felt like a defeat even as he gave it. "All remaining forces, fall back to open space beyond the asteroid field," he said. "We regroup, reassess, and find a way to fight this war on our terms, not theirs. And the pursuit, Marshal. Should we continue engaging as we withdraw?" Draukar's eyes remained fixed on the battle raging before him, on the wreckage of what had been, only hours earlier, the most powerful fleet the Kal Dominion had ever assembled. "No," he said quietly. "Full withdrawal. No further engagement. We have already lost enough." As the surviving Kal ships began their retreat from the asteroid belt, cautious cheers rang out across the human fleet's communication channels. Aboard the Horizon, Admiral Voss watched the retreating enemy formations with a complicated mixture of relief and grim awareness that this victory, however significant, was far from the end of the war. "They're retreating, Admiral," Captain Reyes said, unable to keep a note of hope from his voice. "We did it. We actually did it." Elena studied the tactical display, noting the staggering losses on both sides. The Kal fleet, once numbering over 2,000 ships, had been reduced by nearly half. But the human fleet, too, had paid a heavy price. Nearly a third of their 400 ships lost or severely damaged in the brutal fighting. "We won this battle," Elena said carefully. "But Draukar still commands over 1,200 ships. He'll regroup, and next time, he won't make the same mistake twice." She turned to her crew, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. "Send word to Earth. Begin recovery operations for our damaged ships and stranded crews immediately. And send my compliments to every pilot and crew member who fought today. Their skill and courage just changed the course of this war. As reports of the victory reached Earth, celebrations broke out in cities across the planet, tempered by grief for those who had not returned. In the Colorado Command Center, General Cole watched the tactical reports with quiet relief, knowing that while this battle had been won, the true test still lay ahead. "They'll come back," he said to Dr. Singh, who stood beside him studying damage reports from the fleet, wounded, angry, and far more careful next time. "Then we make sure we're ready for them," Amara replied, "because if today proved anything, it's that Earth is far from finished." Far above the asteroid belt, the shattered remnants of the Kal fleet retreated into the darkness of deep space, carrying with them the bitter lesson that the small blue planet they had watched for 8,000 years was no longer the helpless world they once believed it to be. The war for Earth had reached its turning point, but the final battle was still yet to come. Aliens declared war. After 8,000 years, they never knew about Earth's secret fleet, until it was too late. 2 months passed after the battle in the asteroid belt. On Earth, the victory had brought hope, but also a heavy sense of urgency. Everyone knew High Marshal Draukar would return, and this time, he would not walk into the same trap twice. In the Colorado Command Center, General Marcus Cole stood before a wall of screens, showing reports from around the world. Factories continued working around the clock, building new ships and upgrading old ones with the shield technology that had proven so vital in the last battle. Millions of newly trained soldiers, pilots, and engineers had joined the effort, transforming Earth's defense capabilities faster than anyone had thought possible. "Status report," Marcus said as Admiral Voss entered the room, having returned from the fleet for a brief strategy session. "Fleet strength is now at 520 ships," Elena reported, all outfitted with the upgraded shields. "Pilot training has improved significantly since the last battle, thanks to lessons learned in the field. And the Kal fleet?" Elena's expression grew serious. "Long-range sensors indicate Draukar has received reinforcements from Dominion territory. Current estimates put his remaining forces at around 1,800 ships and growing." Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. "Still more than 3 times our size." "Yes," Elena said, "but this time, he knows what we're capable of. He won't underestimate us again, and he won't fall for the same trick twice." Dr. Amara Singh, who had been quietly working at a nearby console, looked up with a thoughtful expression. "There might be another option, sir. Something we've been developing since the last battle." Marcus turned to her. "What kind of option?" Amara brought up a detailed schematic on the main screen, showing a massive structure unlike anything built before, a combination of shield generator and weapons platform, designed to be assembled in orbit around Earth itself. "We call it the Aegis Shield," Amara explained. "Using the same technology from the 1962 wreckage, combined with everything we've learned since, we believe we can create a planetary-scale defense system. If completed, it could generate a shield capable of protecting Earth's orbital space from direct bombardment, while also serving as a massive weapons platform to support our fleet." "How long to build it?" Marcus asked. "With every resource we have, 3 weeks," Amara said, "but it will require every factory, every engineer, and every available resource on the planet." Marcus looked at Elena. "Can we buy that much time?" Elena studied the tactical display showing the growing Kal fleet at the edge of the solar system. "We'll have to." Aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar studied his own tactical display, now showing a fleet nearly restored to its original strength. The humiliation of the asteroid belt still burned within him, but it had also taught him something valuable: never underestimate an enemy twice. "Marshal, reinforcements from the outer colonies have arrived," Zeth reported. "Fleet strength now stands at 1,840 ships." "Good," Draukar said. "This time, we do not chase them into unfamiliar terrain. This time, we bring the fight to their doorstep, where numbers and overwhelming force will finally decide this war." "Your orders for the approach, Marshal?" Draukar studied the star map carefully, his eyes narrowing with cold, calculated determination. "We advance directly toward Earth in a tight, disciplined formation. No divided forces, no scattered assaults. We overwhelm their defenses with concentrated force and crush any resistance in a single, decisive strike." This time there will be no clever tricks, no hidden traps, only strength against strength. And if they attempt another ambush? Then we adapt, Draukar said. But we will not repeat the same mistake. This war ends with the fall of Earth, one way or another. Back on Earth, the following 3 weeks became the most intense period of preparation the planet had ever seen. Every factory, every shipyard, every engineer worked without rest, racing against time to complete the Aegis shield before the Kal fleet's inevitable return. Mia Santos, now a respected veteran pilot after her performance in the asteroid belt battle, found herself training a new group of recruits, passing on the hard-earned lessons of combat to those preparing for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Remember, she told her squadron during a training exercise, the Kal are strong, but they're predictable. They believe in overwhelming force above everything else. Use that. Make them commit, then make them pay for it. Her recruits listened carefully, young faces filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Like Mia weeks earlier, many of them had never imagined their lives would lead to this moment, defending their entire planet against an enemy from the stars. In orbit above Earth, construction of the Aegis shield progressed at a pace that seemed almost impossible. Massive sections of the structure, built in factories across the globe and launched into space, using newly constructed heavy-lift rockets, were assembled piece by teams of engineers and automated construction drones working around the clock. Dr. Amara Singh spent most of her waking hours aboard the orbital construction platform, personally overseeing the final stages of assembly. The pressure was immense. Every day of delay brought the Kal fleet closer, and every mistake risked the entire project's failure. "Status on the primary shield generator?" she asked her team during one of the final assembly phases. 90% complete, reported one of her engineers. We should have full system integration within 48 hours, assuming no further complications. Amara nodded, though the tension never left her shoulders. 48 hours felt like both an eternity and no time at all, given what was at stake. On the 15th day of preparation, long-range sensors detected the Kal fleet beginning its final approach toward Earth. Admiral Voss received the report aboard the horizon, her expression tightening with the weight of what was coming. "Time until they reach engagement range?" she asked. "Approximately 6 days, Admiral," Captain Reyes reported. Elena immediately contacted the Colorado Command Center. "General Cole, the Kal fleet is moving. We have 6 days before they reach Earth." Marcus's voice came through, tight with urgency. "Dr. Singh, status on the Aegis shield." Amara's voice joined the call, tired but determined. "We can have it operational within 5 days, General. It will be close, but we can make it." "Then make it happen," Marcus said, "because we're going to need every advantage we can get." As the Kal fleet drew closer to Earth, tension mounted across the planet. Cities prepared underground shelters, though everyone understood that if the fleet failed to hold the line, no shelter would be enough to save them. Governments coordinated evacuation plans for essential personnel, while the vast majority of humanity remained on the surface, watching the skies with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Aboard the horizon, Admiral Voss gathered her top commanders for a final strategy session before the coming battle. "This time, Draukar won't fall for a retreat trick or an ambush," she said, studying the tactical display showing the massive approaching Kal fleet. "He's learned from his mistakes, and he's bringing everything in a single, disciplined formation aimed directly at Earth." "So what's our strategy this time, Admiral?" Captain Reyes asked. Elena's eyes moved to a display showing the nearly completed Aegis shield in orbit above Earth. "This time, we don't need to trick them into a disadvantageous position. We're going to make our home field the disadvantage they can't overcome. The Aegis shield will provide covering fire and defensive support, unlike anything they've faced before, while our fleet engages directly, using the shield's protection to fight on more even terms." "And if the shield isn't fully operational in time?" Elena's expression remained steady despite the uncertainty. "Then we fight with what we have, and we make every single ship, every single life, count." 5 days later, with the Kal fleet just hours from engagement range, Dr. Amara Singh made her final report from the orbital construction platform. "Aegis shield primary systems online," she reported, her voice trembling with exhaustion and barely contained excitement. Full system integration complete. We're ready. Cheers rang out across the command centers on Earth and aboard the human fleet. For the first time since the war began, humanity possessed not just a fleet, but a fortress, a planetary defense system capable of standing against the full might of the Kyle Dominion. Admiral Voss studied the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet, now visible even to Earth's most basic sensors, a wall of 1,800 ships bearing down on the planet with terrifying, disciplined precision. All ships, take defensive positions around the Aegis shield, she ordered. This is it. Everything we've built, everything we've sacrificed, comes down to what happens next. Across the human fleet, 520 ships moved into position, forming a protective formation around the massive shield structure, now glowing with energy in Earth's orbit. Behind them, the blue and green planet they had sworn to protect waited in tense silence, its people watching the sky, knowing that the fate of their entire world would be decided in the hours to come. Aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar watched the human formation with cold, calculating eyes, studying the strange new structure now visible in Earth's orbit. Analysis of the new structure, he demanded. Unknown technology, Marshal, Zeth reported. Energy readings suggest some kind of shield or defense platform. It appears operational. Draukar's expression hardened with grim determination. It doesn't matter what tricks they've prepared this time. We have the numbers, and this time, we will not hesitate, we will not divide our forces, and we will not underestimate them again. He turned to address his entire fleet through the ship's communication system, his voice carrying across every vessel in the massive armada. Kal warriors, the primitive world before us has proven more resilient than we expected, but resilience alone does not win wars. Numbers do. Strength does. Today, we end this conflict once and for all. Advance. Full assault. No hesitation. The massive Kal fleet surged forward as one, 1,800 ships bearing down on Earth's defenses with overwhelming disciplined force, beginning the final and greatest battle in the war for Earth's survival. The fate of the entire planet now hung in the balance. As the two fleets closed the distance, Admiral Voss stood at the center of the Horizon's bridge, watching the wall of enemy ships grow larger on the main screen. Around her, the crew worked with quiet, focused intensity, every station manned, every system ready. Enemy fleet entering weapons range in 30 seconds, Captain Reyes reported. All ships, hold formation, Elena ordered, her voice calm, despite the enormity of what was coming. Let the Aegis shield's outer defenses soften their approach before we engage directly. As the Kal fleet crossed into range, the massive Aegis shield came alive, batteries of long-range weapons built into its structure, opening fire on the approaching formation. Beams of concentrated energy tore through the leading edge of the Kal fleet, catching Draukar's forces off guard with the sheer range and power of the planetary defense system. Aboard the Voidbreaker, Zeth's voice was tight with alarm. Marshal, we're taking fire from the structure itself. Leading formation reporting heavy losses. Continue the advance, Draukar ordered, his jaw clenched. We anticipated defensive fire. Push through it. Numbers will carry us past their defenses. The Kal fleet pressed forward despite the losses, absorbing the Aegis shield's long-range bombardment as they closed the distance toward the waiting human fleet. When the two forces finally met, the battle exploded into a chaotic storm of weapons fire, explosions, and maneuvering ships filling the space around Earth's orbit. Engage, Elena ordered, and the human fleet surged forward to meet the enemy head-on, using the Aegis shield's protective energy field to absorb incoming fire, while their own weapons tore into the Kal formation. In the thick of the battle, Mia Santos led her squadron of fighters through the chaos, weaving between larger warships, striking at Kal vessels wherever gaps appeared in their formation. The lessons learned in the asteroid belt had prepared her well, but nothing could fully prepare anyone for the sheer scale of this battle. Ships and explosions filling every direction, as far as sensors could detect. Squadron, form up on my position, she called out over the comm, watching as 3 Kal fighters broke away from the main formation to pursue a damaged human cruiser. We're not letting them finish off the Meridian's sister ship. Her squadron responded instantly, diving toward the pursuing fighters with practiced coordination. The resulting skirmish was brief but intense, human pilots using speed and precision to overcome the Kal fighters' superior firepower, destroying two and forcing the third into a desperate retreat. "Good work, everyone," Mia said, though she had little time to celebrate before new threats appeared on her sensors. The battle showed no signs of slowing, and every passing minute brought fresh losses on both sides. Aboard the Horizon, Admiral Voss watched the battle unfold with growing concern. Despite the Aegis Shield's support, the sheer numbers of the Kal fleet were beginning to take their toll. Reports of losses flowed in steadily from across the human formation, ships and crews lost in the relentless, grinding combat. "Admiral, the shield's power reserves are dropping faster than projected," reported an officer, monitoring the Aegis Shield systems. "At this rate, we estimate 6 hours before the defensive systems become critically weakened." Elena studied the tactical display, watching the battle's progress with a mixture of determination and growing concern. The Kal fleet, despite heavy losses, still vastly outnumbered her forces, and the battle showed no clear sign of turning in humanity's favor. "Get me Dr. Singh," she said. Amara's voice came through moments later, tired but alert from her station, monitoring the Aegis Shield systems. "Admiral, I'm reading the same power drain. We built the shield for defense and support, not for a prolonged battle against a fleet this size. Is there anything we can do to extend its capacity?" Elena asked. There was a brief pause before Amara responded. "There might be one option, Admiral, but it's risky. We could redirect emergency power reserves meant for Earth's ground defenses directly into the shield's weapon systems. It would give us a significant power boost, enough to potentially turn the tide of this battle, but it would leave the surface completely undefended if the fleet fails to hold the line." Elena weighed the decision for only a moment, understanding the enormous risk but recognizing that without decisive action, the battle would slowly grind humanity's fleet into defeat regardless. "Do it," she said firmly. "We can't protect the surface if we lose control of orbit anyway. Redirect all available power to the shield's weapons systems immediately." Aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar watched his own tactical display with growing frustration. Despite the heavy losses his fleet had suffered breaking through the Aegis Shield's initial defenses, the sheer size of his remaining force still held a commanding numerical advantage over the human fleet. "Status report," he demanded. "We've lost approximately 400 ships, Marshal," Zeth reported. "But the human fleet has lost nearly half their remaining forces as well. Our numerical advantage remains significant." Draukar's eyes narrowed as he studied the battle's progression. "Then continue pressing the advantage. Concentrate our forces on their weakest formations. Break their line, and the rest will fall." But even as he gave the order, something on the tactical display caught his attention. A sudden and dramatic spike in energy readings emanating from the massive shield structure at the center of the human formation. "Marshal," Zeth said, alarm creeping into his voice, "the enemy structure's weapons output is increasing dramatically, far beyond previous readings." Draukar's grip tightened on the edge of his console as he watched beams of devastating energy, far more powerful than before, begin tearing through his fleet's formations with terrifying new intensity. "They're finding ways to surprise us at every turn," he muttered, a mixture of frustration and something close to grudging respect coloring his voice. This species refuses to be predictable. As the battle raged on with renewed intensity, both sides pushed everything they had into the fight, knowing that whatever happened in the coming hours would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but the entire future of two civilizations, locked in a war neither could afford to lose. Aliens declared war after 8,000 years. They never knew about Earth's secret fleet, until it was too late. The battle above Earth had raged for 6 hours without pause. Space around the planet was filled with wreckage, drifting debris, and the flashes of endless weapons fire. Both fleets had suffered terrible losses, but neither side had broken, each locked in a desperate struggle that would decide the fate of two civilizations. Aboard the Horizon, Admiral Elena Voss watched the tactical display with tired but focused eyes. The emergency power redirected into the Aegis Shield had given the human fleet a crucial advantage, its weapons now tearing through Kal formations with devastating new power. But the cost was clear. Earth's surface defenses remained completely offline, leaving the planet dangerously exposed should the battle turn against them. Admiral Call, fleet strength down to approximately 1,100 ships, Captain Reyes reported. Our own forces are down to just under 200. Elena studied the numbers grimly. Despite everything, the Call still held a significant numerical advantage. The battle remained far from won. Status on the Aegis Shield's power reserves? She asked. Dropping steadily, Admiral. Dr. Singh estimates we have perhaps 2 more hours before the emergency power boost is exhausted. Elena's jaw tightened. 2 hours. It might be enough time to turn the tide, or it might not be enough at all. Aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar faced a decision that weighed heavily on centuries of Call military pride. His fleet, though still larger than the human forces, had suffered losses beyond anything he had anticipated. The strange planetary defense structure continued tearing through his formations with terrifying efficiency, and for the first time since the war began, doubt had fully taken root in his mind. Marshal, Zeth said quietly, if we continue at this rate of losses, our fleet will be reduced to ineffectiveness within hours, regardless of whether we ultimately win this battle. Draukar stared at the tactical display, watching ship after ship, formation after formation, worn down by an enemy he had once dismissed as primitive and weak. 8,000 years of watching, and still, humanity had found ways to surprise, to adapt, and to fight with a fierce determination the Kal Dominion had rarely encountered in all its long history of conquest. Marshal, Zeth pressed again. Your orders? For a long moment, Draukar said nothing, wrestling with a choice between pride and pragmatism, between the certainty of Kal's superiority he had held his entire life, and the undeniable reality unfolding before him on the tactical display. Finally, he spoke. Concentrate every remaining ship into a single final assault directly against their central structure. If we can destroy the source of their defensive power, their fleet will lose its greatest advantage, and we can still secure victory. All ships, Marshal? That would leave nothing in reserve. There is no reserve left to matter, Draukar said grimly. This is the moment that decides everything. We commit everything, or we lose everything. Sensors aboard the horizon detected the sudden, dramatic shift in Kal formation, every remaining ship converging into a single, massive spearhead aimed directly at the Aegis shield. Admiral, they're committing their entire remaining fleet to a direct assault on the shield structure, Captain Reyes reported, alarm clear in his voice. If they break through, Dr. Singh's team won't survive, and we lose our greatest advantage. Elena's mind raced through the tactical possibilities, understanding immediately what Draukar intended. Destroy the shield, destroy humanity's greatest advantage, and the sheer numbers still remaining in the Kal fleet would likely be enough to overwhelm what remained of Earth's defenses. All ships, converge on defensive position Alpha, Elena ordered, her voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. We form a wall between their assault and the shield structure. We do not let them through, no matter the cost. The remaining human fleet, battered but not broken, pulled together into a tight defensive formation, directly between the oncoming Kal spearhead and the Aegis shield. It was a desperate gambit, concentrating their remaining strength into a single point of defense, but Elena understood there was no other choice remaining. Dr. Singh, Elena called through the comm, we need everything the shield can give us, right now, every last bit of power. Amara's voice came back, strained but determined, redirecting all remaining reserves to forward weapons and defensive systems. Admiral, this will drain the shield completely. Once this is spent, we'll have nothing left. Then make it count, Elena said, because this is the moment that decides everything. The two fleets collided in a final, desperate clash unlike anything either side had experienced in the entire war. The remaining Kal ships, driven by Draukar's unwavering determination, pressed forward with reckless intensity, absorbing devastating losses as they fought to break through the human defensive line. The human fleet, equally desperate, held their formation with fierce determination, every pilot and crew member understanding that the fate of their entire planet rested on their ability to hold the line. Mia Santos, flying alongside the remnants of her squadron, pushed her fighter to its absolute limits, striking at Kal's ships wherever she could find an opening. watching friends and fellow pilots fall around her, even as she continued fighting with everything she had left. "Hold the line." Commander Okafor's voice crackled through the comm, strained but unbroken. "Everyone, hold the line. Earth is counting on us." Aboard the Horizon, Admiral Voss watched the battle with an intensity that bordered on desperation. Every fiber of her being focused on the thin, battered line of human ships standing between the Kal assault and the Aegis shield. Losses mounted with terrible speed on both sides, but slowly, painfully, the human line began to hold. "Admiral, Kal formation is beginning to fracture," Captain Reyes reported, hope creeping into his exhausted voice. "Their spearhead is losing cohesion." Elena studied the tactical display, watching as the once unstoppable Kal assault began to falter under the combined weight of the human fleet's desperate defense and the Aegis shield's devastating remaining firepower. "Push forward," Elena ordered. "Every ship, full offensive. This is our chance to end this." Aboard the Voidbreaker, High Marshal Draukar watched his final gambit crumble before his eyes. Ship after ship of his once mighty fleet fell to the desperate, unyielding human defense, until finally, only a fraction of his original force remained, scattered and disorganized amid the wreckage of a battle that had cost the Kal Dominion more than any conflict in its long history. "Marshal," Zeth said, his voice hollow with exhaustion and defeat, "remaining fleet strength is down to less than 200 ships. We cannot continue this assault." Draukar stared at the tactical display in silence, watching the ruins of his fleet drift among the wreckage of a battle he had been certain the Kal Dominion would win. 8,000 years of patient observation, decades of careful planning, and in the end, it had all come down to this moment, standing at the edge of total defeat before a species he had once dismissed as nothing more than a curiosity. "Order a full withdrawal," Draukar said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of defeat. "Whatever ships remain, bring them home. This war is lost." "Marshal, the Council will not accept this outcome quietly." Draukar turned away from the tactical display, staring instead at the small blue planet still visible through the viewport, battered but unbroken, its defenders having achieved what should have been impossible. "The Council can accept whatever truth they choose," he said quietly, "but the truth remains the same regardless. We spent 8,000 years watching this world, believing we understood it completely. We were wrong, and that mistake has cost us everything we brought to conquer it." The remaining Kal ships began their retreat, breaking away from Earth's orbit and disappearing into the depths of space, leaving behind a battlefield scarred with the wreckage of the largest conflict humanity had ever faced. Aboard the Horizon, as the last Kal ships vanished from sensor range, a profound, exhausted silence fell across the bridge before erupting into overwhelming relief and celebration. Admiral Voss allowed herself a rare, genuine smile as she watched the retreating enemy fleet disappear from the tactical display. "They're leaving," Captain Reyes said, disbelief and joy mixing in his voice. "Admiral, they're actually leaving." Elena nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the past months finally begin to lift from her shoulders. "Send word to Earth. Tell them it's over. Tell them we held the line." Across the planet, as news of the victory spread, cities erupted in celebration unlike anything the world had ever seen. People who had spent months living in fear now poured into streets and public squares, celebrating together as one unified world, their differences forgotten in the shared relief of survival. In the Colorado Command Center, General Marcus Cole watched the celebrations unfold, across news feeds from every corner of the globe, a tired but deeply satisfied smile on his face. Beside him, Dr. Amara Singh finally allowed herself to rest, her months of relentless work finally rewarded, with the survival of the world she had worked so hard to protect. "We did it," Amara said quietly, still hardly believing the words as she spoke them. "We did," Marcus agreed. 60 years of secrets, sacrifice, and preparation, all for this moment. Earth is still standing. Months later, life on Earth began the slow process of healing and rebuilding. The war had changed the planet forever, uniting nations that had once been divided by borders and old conflicts into a single, cooperative Earth defense coalition, dedicated to ensuring the planet would never again be caught unprepared. Admiral Elena Voss stood once again upon the bridge of the horizon, now serving as the flagship of humanity's permanent, openly acknowledged space fleet. No longer hidden beneath the ice of Antarctica, Project Aegis had become the foundation of a new era for humanity, one where Earth stood ready and visible among the stars, no longer hiding from a universe that had finally learned to respect its strength. Mia Santos, now a decorated squadron commander, stood on the observation deck, watching new recruits train in the same asteroid field maneuvers that had once saved humanity from near-certain defeat. She thought often of those who had not survived the war, carrying their memory forward in every mission she flew. Far away, in the depths of Kal Dominion space, High Marshal Draukar stood before the High Council, delivering his final report on the failed conquest of Earth. Though his career and reputation had suffered greatly from the defeat, one truth remained clear to every member of the Council. The small blue planet they had watched for 8,000 years was no longer a curiosity to be studied from a distance. It was a civilization to be respected, and perhaps, one day, even to be approached not as a conquest, but as an equal. Back on Earth, as the sun set over a world forever changed by war, Admiral Voss looked out at the stars from the horizon's observation deck, remembering the words her grandmother had once told her, decades before the war had ever begun. One day, her grandmother had said, "The stars will test us, and when they do, we will show them exactly who we are." Elena smiled softly, watching the peaceful darkness of space stretch endlessly before her, a galaxy that now knew, without doubt, that Earth would never again be underestimated. The war was over, but humanity's true journey among the stars had only just begun. In the weeks following the final battle, the world worked to understand exactly what had been won and what had been lost. Memorial services were held in every country, honoring the pilots, soldiers, and engineers who had given their lives defending the planet. Names of the fallen were read aloud in cities across the globe, a quiet reminder that victory, however necessary, had come at a heavy cost. General Marcus Cole attended many of these memorials personally, standing quietly among grieving families, offering what comfort he could to those who had lost loved ones, in a war most of humanity had not even known was coming until it arrived. He carried the weight of every name, every loss, as a reminder of why the work of protecting Earth could never truly stop. At one such memorial, held in a quiet park near the ruins of a coastal city damaged during the early days of the invasion, Marcus found himself standing beside Dr. Amara Singh, both watching as a young boy laid flowers beneath a newly built monument listing the names of the fallen. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" Amara asked quietly. 60 years of secrecy, all the sacrifices made long before any of us were even born, just to reach this moment? Marcus considered the question carefully before answering. "I used to wonder that, back when the secret felt like a burden with no clear purpose. But standing here, watching this boy honor people he never even met, people who gave everything so a future like his could exist, I don't wonder anymore." Amara nodded slowly, understanding settling over her tired features. "We built something worth protecting." "We did," Marcus agreed, "and now it's up to the next generation to make sure it stays that way." Elsewhere, the newly formed Earth Defense Coalition began the difficult work of building a permanent, transparent framework for humanity's place among the stars. No longer able to rely on secrecy alone, world leaders worked together to establish open lines of communication with other spacefaring civilizations, hoping to avoid future conflicts through diplomacy, rather than hidden fleets and desperate last stands. Admiral Voss found herself frequently called upon to advise this new diplomatic effort, her experience leading Earth's defense giving her a unique perspective on how to approach relations with civilizations far older and more powerful than humanity's own. She often thought back to Draukar's words, broadcast to the entire planet at the war's beginning, promising destruction to those who resisted, and wondered how differently things might have unfolded if the Kal Dominion had approached first contact with curiosity instead of conquest. During one diplomatic session, a representative from a newly contacted peaceful trading alliance asked Elena directly how humanity had managed to survive an assault from a civilization as powerful as the Kal Dominion. Elena considered the question thoughtfully before answering. "We survived because we never stopped preparing. even during the centuries when no threat seemed real. We survived because when the moment finally came, our people chose to stand together rather than apart. And I think, more than anything, we survived because our enemy believed strength alone was enough to guarantee victory. They forgot that determination, when driven by the desire to protect something worth protecting, can overcome even the greatest imbalance of power. The representative nodded thoughtfully. A valuable lesson for any civilization to remember. Yes, Elena agreed. One I hope we never forget either. Years later, Mia Santos stood before a new class of recruits, many of them children during the war, now old enough to choose their own path in defending the world that had raised them. She thought of Commander Okafor, who had not survived the final battle, and of all the pilots who had trained alongside her, many of whom now existed only as names on memorial walls scattered across the planet. The universe is bigger than any of us truly understand, she told the young recruits gathered before her. There are civilizations out there far older, far more powerful than anything humanity has ever built. Some may become allies, some may become threats, but whatever comes, remember this: we are not defined by our size, or our age, or how long we've existed among the stars. We are defined by what we choose to protect, and how far we're willing to go to protect it. As she looked out over the faces of the new generation, faces filled with the same mixture of fear and determination she had once carried herself, Mia felt a quiet confidence that whatever challenges the future might bring, Earth would be ready to face them, together, as it always had been since the day the stars first tested humanity's resolve. Far above, in the quiet darkness of space, the ships of Earth's now openly acknowledged fleet patrolled the solar system, no longer hidden beneath layers of secrecy and ice, but standing proudly as a symbol of a world that had learned, through fire and sacrifice, exactly what it meant to be truly ready for whatever the universe might bring next. The stars had tested humanity, and humanity had answered. Now, for the first time in history, Earth stood among them, not as a hidden secret, but as an equal. The end.